We welcome Lisa Reethen here. She is responsible for the business lead at Bosch Climate Solutions. And the title of her presentation is Green is not an option. So I'm very curious. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So I think we heard already about currently a lot of very loud crises. I mean, we're having a war in Europe, we're having a supply chain crisis, we have still a pandemic somewhere. So I think from time to time we forget a little bit that, yes, we're all talking about that climate crisis, but are we really acting on it? So why now is the time? This is part of Hawaii. And here you can find Mauna Loa. And in Mauna Loa, some researchers and scientists are measuring the carbon dioxide parts per million in the atmosphere. And they are doing that for years. They started in 1958 in measuring that parts per million CO2. And for a very, very long time, the idea was if that numbers go above 400, we're going to have a collapse in that world. End of April, we measured that number. For the first time in history, we not only hit the 400, but we hit 420 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. And that is a reason why each and every one of us should be quite clear that the time to do something and to act on the climate crisis is now. And I'm really getting frustrated because very often we are having that discussion, what happens with that number? We're having a climate warming, a global warming potential with that number, if that steadily going up about 2 to 3 degrees. And I'm still having people telling me, oh, I like hot summers. I say, come on, this is not about I don't like hot summers. But this is about, you need to think about a human body. The temperature of our body is about 36 to 37 degrees Celsius. If we are above 38.5, we are talking about high fever. And that is exactly what happens to that planet. This planet is on fever. And we are having no chance in a short run to bring that down. So I think we just have to be quite clear about the urgency and what these numbers need, and that we understand as people and as companies that we need to do something. And what needs to be done is quite clear. It's not the fact that nobody knows what could be done. We are having a lot of roadmaps and goals. We have a Paris Agreement where the world sat together and agreed on what we as a world need to do. And then Germany sat down, and here's the plan for Germany. Germany sat down in 2018, we were starting with 858 million tons of CO2. That is the Germany baseline. And then we made a plan how we go down to 438, not to 0, to 438, because that is like the first milestone in 2030. And 2030 seems so far away if we look at today. But if we think in climate dimensions, this is just a right step. This is next around the corner. And this is quite clear as well. Here are listed all the industries which have a responsibility and the biggest impact on that emissions. And as higher the impact, the higher is the lever to do so. And that is one of the reasons why I'm here, because you as an industry are industry which can multiply what can be done in each and every of that single industries. Because you have an influence on industrial, on buildings, on mobility, on a lot of other industries. And that is exactly what needs to be done. We need to understand what each and every company can do to achieve those goals. So I brought an example, and the example is Bosch, a very huge, traditional, very Swabian company, formerly led by those two guys, our CEO and CFO, and they announced very proudly, beginning of 2020, that we are producing carbon neutral. This is very important. We are not carbon neutral, we are producing. There's a huge difference. So what does that mean if you produce carbon neutral? Just short question in the room. Would you know your company's carbon footprint? So can somebody tell me, and you don't need to tell me the number, just raise hands. Can somebody tell me the number of the company you're working for or you're owning? What is your company's carbon footprint? 1? 2? See, and that is the point. I was walking yesterday around the halls and asking at each and every booth, what do you do for sustainability? And what is your company's carbon footprint? And each and everyone is telling me that is so important for them. And sustainability is the key strategic topic. And everybody is marketing, doing sustainability. But nobody could answer me that question. And that is the point. And those guys were very, very early adopters because they asked already, now 17 years ago, their engineers, what can we do to produce carbon neutral? And before you discuss what you can do, you need to start in measuring. So what you start is you calculate your company's carbon footprint. By the way, you can do that on your own as well. Just calculate your personal carbon footprint, and you will be surprised what your lifestyle is represented in that number. So Bosch calculated the worldwide carbon footprint of the company, and we ended up with 3.3 million tons of CO2. All factories, all offices, our own fleet, everything which is within our own responsibility as a company. For those who are a little bit deeper in that topic, that is called Scope 1 and 2. Scope 1 and 2, company carbon footprint 3.3. So how did we get that down to 0? And that is more or less for each and everybody who is producing for every company the same 4 levers. In a different way, you can mix them, but more or less these are 4 topics you need to discuss. The first, everybody's doing that for years, energy efficiency. So, for sure, every ton of CO2, every energy which is not consumed doesn't need to be reduced. So, look around your factories. And here again, we are discussing very often that everybody is doing energy efficiency for years, for decades. Yes, I know. But there is technological innovation. There are great ideas which are just not realized. If we walk around those factories and we ask those engineers, what would you do if you had money for energy efficiencies? They are coming up with lists of great ideas. Just nobody ever listens, and nobody realizes those ideas. So ask and talk to guys in the production line and see what can be done. And there are cool concepts and there is technological innovation, but further reduce our energy consumption in our factories. Second is own green power. Look around your buildings, your carports, wherever you have space on the production decks. Look what is possible and generate your own green energy. Those business cases, as it's frustrating to look at frustrating at the energy prices, I know. But the higher those prices get, the better those business cases look. So see where you can build up sensible cases where it makes sense to building up your own green energy, photovoltaic, solar, whatever is possible. Third, you can buy green energy. It's not as easy as it seems overall if you want to do it at the global scale. Yes, in Germany, you just call your local provider, say, hey, I want to have green energy. But in South Africa, in Asia, and some parts of the US, it's not as easy as it seems. So you have to really look deeply into that. And although if you do have a contract which says you have green energy in Germany, you really need to look a little bit deeper at page 39, little star. So you really have to look into a detail that you really be sure that the power you're purchasing is green. And the last point is compensation. This is very often a very emotional topic. Is that the right thing to do or not? In my personal viewpoint, it can be part of the story. What is compensation? Compensation means whatever you cannot reduce or avoid, you compensate. The easiest example is you plant somewhere in the world trees, and those trees will get the CO2 out of the atmosphere, which you still emit. So that is just a discussion you can do internally, whether you're interested or not. So for Bosch, we figured out after a lot of research and a lot of falling down, those are the 4 levers to come down to produce with net zero. Now, the next question is, what is now? What we're going to do next? Because if you look at that small little green bubble, that is the company carbon footprint. Now we look at scope 3. Scope 3 and a goal for 2030. What is scope 3? Scope 3 is our supply chain emissions. So what does that mean? When you look at emissions and the greenhouse gas protocol, it is clearly defined that you are responsible not only for the emissions of your factory and your offices, but also for the emissions of all the raw material you purchase, for the emissions of all the logistics you need, for the emissions for the product usage. So we just take the washing machine as a great example. So Bosch is producing that great washing machines. All the material we buy to build those machines is part of our product carbon footprint. When we ship that machinery around the world, that is part of the emissions of the footprint of that machine. If our sales guy is going around the world to sell those machines, that is also part of it. And finally, if you hopefully are using your entire lifetime that wonderful Bosch washing machine, each and every time you push the down button, that energy usage is part of our footprint. And just at that very simple example of a washing machine, you see for Bosch, as a huge company with I don't know how many thousands of products around the globe, this is a hell of a lot of analytical data challenge to get to the right point. And as you can see at the size of that bubble, our emissions in the supply chain, our scope 3 emissions, are 100 times as high as scope 1 and 2. And that is very often the case for companies which are producing active products. And here it comes also to the question, can we do that on our own? And for sure, the answer is no. We need our supply chain. We need you as part of the industry taking care of your part of the emissions. We need to come down in the product usage. We need to use less material, more recycled material. We need to activate whatever is possible to come down to the emissions and to reduce also that. You also see the small, tiny point business travel. This is very often also a very emotional topic. Do you measure your business travel? Yes. What do? We compensate it. Okay, so we try not to fly within Germany, and we try to use the Deutsche Bahn as much as possible, and we try everything. But in fact, this is a very tiny bubble, to be honest. So yes, we are doing things, but is that the biggest lever? No, for sure not. The biggest lever is the material, the circular economy, and whatever goes around the products. And here we need the whole industry, we need the whole ecosystem, otherwise we for ourselves cannot move forward. And that is the reason I am here, because 2 years ago we founded Bosch Climate Solutions with the idea to bring all that experiences, know-how together and consult the external market. So we don't work internally, we're having a sustainability department in Bosch, but we work together with Trumpf, with Mahle, with Schubert, with Chiron, with a lot of industrial companies to give that know-how further and say, hey, we can do it. And with that, we learned a lot. And this is a I think, a few ideas what you can do. Yes, we learned that this is a marathon. This is not a sprint for sure. You can sprint in project plans. I'm very often saying, because everybody's saying, okay, I don't have time currently with that corporate footprint thing and that emissions calculation, and we do that maybe next time, maybe next year, I don't know, somewhere. In fact, we need 4 to 6 weeks, and then you do have a corporate carbon footprint, you do have a plan to get down to 0, and you have an investment case. Yes, then you need 5 to 10 years to do it. But unless you don't know how and you don't know where you stand, you will never ever start doing it. So get fast a plan for your company. Where do you stand and what you can do? Second, climate needs to be in the sustainability context. It doesn't make sense that we save the climate, but we mess up human rights and diversity for sure. Yes, you cannot do everything, but it makes really sense, and very often these are very complementary things that you bring them together. The third, we do need support from the top management. If this is not understood, that sustainability and climate action in a company is a strategic topic, and it will be a competitive advantage, and we are still sitting down with the marketing department because this is a communication issue maybe, then this is just not understood. And if your top management still thinks this will go away, then this is not understood. And I hope for a lot of companies that soon the top management will understand that this is a major priority. So legal frames and regulation is speeding up the hell. Yes, we can wait for intrinsic motivation and self-drive things, but currently we see that the EU taxonomy, the EU Green Deal, and the CSRD regulation comes up, and all of a sudden, a lot of companies which never ever thought they're going to do something there, they need to do now something. We need everybody. It has to be a cross-line business approach. Latestly, if you sit down and talk about a product carbon footprint, you need everybody in that company. You need procurement, you need R&D, you need the head of logistics, you need the sales guy because he needs to be able to pitch that story, you need the communication lady because we're gonna have a sustainability report, so you need everybody. This is the same like digitalization. It will never ever work if you had that single CDO without budget and resources. And last point, it makes a lot of fun. This is really a cool topic, and I can only highly motivate you to do something in there. Formerly, I was working for a great company called IBM, and the last years I was responsible within cybersecurity department. And you don't know what happens if you invite a team to a meeting about cybersecurity. The first is scared because they think they clicked the wrong link. The second is annoyed because they think it gets a new password regulation or something. If you invite employees to a sustainability kickoff, you see so many intrinsically motivated faces. You have people sitting there saying, hey, I want to do something because in my private life I do this and that and I have kids and I want to change something and this is not part of my job, but I want to contribute. Get those people on the right table and you will see that you have so many people who want to work with you and bring that topic forward. And I leave you with the last message, not from Greenpeace, this is important, but of Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock. And he wrote in 2020 to his CEOs, every company in every industry will be transformed by the transition to a net zero world. The question is, will you lead or will you be led? And I think that is the only question you need to ask yourself if you are responsible within a company. Will you lead that transition? Or will you somehow in the next year be pushed by regulation, by customer, by consumer, by whoever? Because the right time is really now, and we need all of you. Thank you very much.